The start of hockey. After kicking something, taking up a stick and hitting something, say a ball, is the next most natural thing to do. And so man has been doing that since ancient times.
Beautiful pass to Mortensen, who's got a clear run to Saul. It must be a goal. Must be a goal.
Montreal was the first tournament on turf. From the moment we saw it, we absolutely loved the surface. It just felt perfect. The impact on the game was profound.
El hockey era muy diferente a lo que es ahora.
The turf made my game go to another level. It's impacted the game a massive amount, and I'm very happy that it has because it's made the game more attractive.
Hockey goes back into the mists of time on all 5 continents. In terms of a game that had some rules, 1871 was that point, and that's when we determined that hockey truly started.
It was raining at a cricket match, and just to pass the time with a cricket ball, they started knocking the ball around, and then someone thought it was quite a good idea. They set up 2 goals and hockey was born.
During this period, you've got the British taking hockey to all corners of the empire. Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, India, and also to North America.
India and Pakistan, they dominated the world of hockey because they were pretty much just the most skillful players in the world.
They developed these stick skills that were something that the rest of the hockey world hadn't really encountered.
They've got a fervour for unpredictability, they love it, and they play with such flair, and the crowd pushed them to another level. They were so passionate about the game.
That was really a good era for Pakistan hockey, for India hockey, for Asian hockey. It was full of glamour in those years.
In England, the women realised that there was a potential for a much greater crowd, and very inventively they homed in on Wembley.
It was hockey's big day out, the only time that you could see live women's hockey in this country, so you know we wanted to be there and we wanted to get behind the England team at the time. The atmosphere was just tremendous, you know, walking down Wembley Way, the flags, the banners, the whistles. We went home with very sore throats, shouting and screaming.
It was an amazing experience, but you couldn't really play hockey properly on grass like that. Not many clubs enjoyed perfect grass pitches. Some of them were hellishly bumpy, and often the grass wasn't cut close enough.
Grass tended to be longish. In the middle of winter, it was often quite muddy. I remember always trying to educate groundsmen about what hockey needed, and it needed mowers. Occasionally it needed a roll with a roller to smooth out the bumps. It wasn't like a rugby field. I don't think the game would have grown anything like it has if it was still on grass.
The Olympic Games in 1976 were played for the first time on a synthetic pitch. We never had any synthetic pitches in Australia.
Preparing for a tournament on a surface we'd never played on was something that we'd never experienced.
We just trained the way we normally did on as flat a surface as we could. Everybody was facing exactly the same problem.
And there were all sorts of strange rumours floating around that the surface temperature was extremely high, and that in fact we would get burnt feet. And there was talk even of putting asbestos in the soles of the shoes so that we wouldn't burn our feet. We were completely in the dark about what we were going to face. From the moment we saw it, we absolutely loved the surface to play on. It just felt perfect. And we found we could do things confidently that on a grass field you just couldn't do.
We ended up in the semi-finals to be greeted by Pakistan, who were the favourites in '76. We ended up winning that game and going into the final against New Zealand, whom we haven't lost to for a long period of time.
New Zealand had not won any gold medals at the Olympics in Montreal to that point. So the excitement in the Southern Hemisphere was mounting, and of course the old rivals Australia in the final was just what everyone wanted.
New Zealand were a very difficult team. People underestimated them, I suspect.
Fortunately, we had trained a lot on gym floors and developed skills playing on very flat surfaces. And that was a wonderful preparation, as it turned out, for meeting our first artificial surface. I think it'd be fair to say we did have the better of that final. We scored soon into the second half, and from there on, Australia applied an awful lot of pressure to us, but the defence held well, and we ran ourselves into the ground.
New Zealand beat us. We hadn't lost to them going into that for a long time. We didn't lose to them for a long period of time after that either, and probably still haven't.
Internationally, I think there was a bit of disbelief that New Zealand had won, but as a group of players, we did feel determined that we had a medal in us, and as it turned out, it was a big one.
You have to say that New Zealand were just better than us on the day. That's the way it was. That's the nature of sport. Don't like that terribly much, but that's something you just have to swallow and get on with.
There was a transition from grass hockey to artificial turf. But the artificial turf allow players to perform different kind of skills which they were not able to perform in the grass era.
There were things you could do on the turf that you couldn't do on grass, and the players were learning new skills at a fast rate.
You had a faster surface so that the ball would travel faster, and the players also became very much fitter.
That increased the tempo and energy that was in the game.
The moves, the speed of it, everything increased, and obviously the technique and the tactics changed with that.
The sticks that were being used, the type of sticks that were being made, the ball type was changed. So these things, combined with rule changes, move the game to what you'd probably call the modern era.
I think that when the turf first came in, we played grass hockey on turf. As the turf changed, the skills of the game had to change.
Hockey turf has changed constantly since it was first developed, but it was in the early 2000s that it started to really change. We introduced polyethylene fibres, which is softer and make the pitch less bouncy and the ball easier to control. So the game got faster and players' skills flourished.
Luciano Aymar, Jamie Dwyer, all these players who were ahead of me were coming up with these amazing skills, and seeing that and catching clips of these players who were just spectacular, that affected me, and I wanted to learn those things.
The players are the real innovators in the game. They actually have to solve problems on the field in real time, under pressure.
People like Jamie Dwyer, Turnanoia and co, they just have an almost magical ability to be able to understand the pressure that they're under and make the right decision in a split second of time.
Y la técnica varía mucho de una superficie a la otra. Y hockey se hizo más dinámico, más físico, y cambiaron mucho las habilidades. A jugar en césped sintético, el jugador empezó a reinventarse en sus habilidades.
The cool thing about hockey, where the innovation and the creativity really allows the sport to grow, and when new skills come into the game, the first thing you want to do is you want to get onto the pitch and try them.
Innovation happens in different parts and for different reasons, and then once it happens and if it's successful, then everyone starts to do it. On grass, you spend your time with your stick vertical because the ball could jump as it's coming towards you, kind of bounce. But as soon as you're playing on an artificial turf, the ball, if it's coming at you flat, you know it's going to stay flat. So you can have your stick horizontally. 90 degrees makes quite a big difference to the skills that you can then do.
I remember the '96 Olympics when Bram Lohmans, a big tall Dutch guy, scored 2 drag flicks in the Olympic final. That's the first time I really seen a great drag flick change the game.
By the time I played my first Olympic Games in 2000, it was a dominant weapon for goal scoring.
The ball can travel just as fast, 110, 120 kilometres an hour, and it can go anywhere in the goal.
The sticks being lighter, the water-based surface being much smoother, means that the drag flick is now a very powerful weapon and a big part of the game.
The tomahawk, that seeped into the game accidentally. We thought in Australia it was illegal, and when the umpires stopped blowing that it was illegal, we started to think, well, we've got to do this, you know.
Growing up as a young kid, the tomahawk was obviously one of the most famous skills. Using the side of the stick, allowing the ball to go so much faster than hitting with the flat part of the stick. It became a lethal weapon. I think we'd break about 3 sticks a season, and my parents getting angry, saying, stop hitting the tomahawk because you're breaking your stick.
One of the biggest things that came in when I was playing was the aerial ball. So to get out of defence, you would throw it over the whole defence, right? So that's one of the skills I learned to make me different.
Aerials play a huge part, so throwing overheads where they're penetrating or just to get out of the fence. On grass, you had to keep your stick on the ball, which didn't give you the leverage. So the turf, it's much easier because you can slide your stick under the ball and then scoop it up. Some guys throw it 70, 75 meters.
Y es realmente muy llamativo para el hockey y se disfruta muchísimo verlo.
There was a big step change with the hockey turf in around 2014 with the introduction of multi-directional fibres. Now turfs had no grain, so anything was possible.
Pitches changed, they really did change.
These new pitches were really helping people to grow their game.
It's all about friction, so the less the friction on the ball, the quicker you can dribble, and then the entire game becomes easier and faster if there's less friction. Using like the elevation of the ball and 3D skills, it just completely changed the game, and people started using it as their go-to skill because it's just so hard to defend.
The skills on a sand-based pitch, if you are going against someone one-on-one, then you would have to go around, whereas on a water-based turf, all I've got to do is get you off balance, and then actually I can lift the ball over your stick.
And being able to play in the third dimension is really important. It's interesting to see where we'll go over the next 10 years.
Hockey in the build-up to the London Olympics was going through quite a challenging period, but with hockey being at the heart of the Olympic part, it gave it a great platform to be able to really stand out.
They wanted to revolutionise the sport. Natural grass was green, and then the early artificial pitches were also green.
That's what turfs all were, and that's what they'd been in every Olympics previously, in every World Cup previously, in all of my experience. And lo and behold, there's this bright blue pitch with a pink surround. It just cemented hockey as being right in the very heart and the centre of the Olympic Games.
When you look at some of the aerial shots, you absolutely knew where hockey was on that park.
It took about 2 years to develop the colours and the pitch surface for London 2012, but it was hockey's chance to be brave. It was like a change from black and white TV to bright colour.
We call it London Blue, and that was a very significant addition to the game.
It actually needed to work for broadcasters, for athletes, for officials and fans.
It revolutionised the sport from an audience participation point of view, and it presented a new modern image for the sport.
Fue algo impactante para el hockey y para Londres también. Y fue algo lindo para hacer algo diferente, ¿no? Para decir, bueno, y reinventarse de otra manera y decir, bueno.
2012 Olympics was the most entertaining Olympics. It was on a blue turf, yellow ball, a lot of rule changes, and the atmosphere was very special. Probably my favourite Olympic Games.
668,000 people watched hockey, which was just tremendous. That's the third biggest crowd in the whole Games.
It was an amazing spectacle. It helped to bring hockey right out there into the 21st century. I mean, it was special.
Realmente fue un show impresionante. Obviamente que otros Juegos Olímpicos también fueron muy lindos, pero Londres fue algo excepcional.
I think from many aspects it was a successful game, which to me will stay as a good legacy and positive legacy for the world of hockey.
It changed hockey, it definitely did.
we mean by sustainability kind of covers three areas. We need to be economically sustainable, we need to be socially sustainable, to be as inclusive as we possibly can for everyone, and then finally we need to be environmentally sustainable.
When we talk about sustainability in hockey, it's always been something on our mind, and not just the water side of things, but how the turf is made. And I think that's one thing that's definitely on the top of the mind of everyone involved, to try and make sure that we are sustainable.
Hockey turf will naturally play a big role in hockey's future. In particular, portability and sustainability will be key things moving forward.
The change that happened from natural grass to artificial turf, that had a seismic effect on the game. And I think the next seismic shift will be when water is no longer used on a turf. Tokyo used material that is 60% regrowable sugarcane, so that's a huge step forward from anything that we've had previously. And the amount of water now required to water a top-level pitch is half what was required 5 years ago, with the ultimate aim of having no water required, so we need to leave as small a footprint as we possibly can on the planet when playing our sport.
Hockey facilities have always been considered permanent infrastructure because it takes a lot of effort to make something so precise and so flat. Big stadium hockey changes that. We can take a stadium and in 3 days we can convert that to a hockey pitch. That gives us the flexibility to take hockey matches into bigger stadiums in new locations. That's really exciting for the game.
We wanted hockey to really entice people outside of hockey to watch hockey, and I think that's what they did with big stadium hockey.
When we saw the teams walking out to flames and to cheers and to real euphoria in what was a very, very different environment for hockey to be in, it really brought a tear to my eye.
To see it in Dublin for our Olympic qualifier was incredible too. I think the team really appreciated it and they felt it was something special.
The changes that have occurred in the last 50 years have been incredible.
Players can now produce passes and stick work that are totally different to anything that was played on natural grass.
When you see it live, when you see people, what they can do with the ball, how fast it is, how strong they are, how fit they are, that's what is the most incredible part of hockey.
Their ability to be able to handle a stick and a ball, it's just great to behold.
Hockey is one of the most exciting games to watch, especially live. The ball speed, the athletes, how they move, the goals, it's really entertaining.
There's always action. Whether it's a good game or a bad game, there's always action. And that's hockey in a nutshell.
You can start aged 8, and we recently hosted the first ever over 80s international match. So you literally can play it for life. It doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, what your abilities are, what gender you are, what religion you are, hockey is open to you.
We want the young person who pick up hockey to stay with hockey for his whole life.
Hockey es un deporte realmente excepcional. A mí me dio grandes oportunidades, me dio la oportunidad primero de desarrollarme como persona.
I've been a hockey player all my life, which I consider the greatest gift my father ever gave me, and it's a sport that can give a lot.
I loved every single game that I played and I wish I played more.
You know, it's just a joy to be part of it.
I love that it's always going to be part of my life.